All right, welcome back to Floridawoodsbanshee. So it's Sunday, March 15th. And yeah, this video here, I'm going to try to keep this short, guys. I want to talk about porting. So I ended up getting a Chariot head. I got that off of eBay. It was $219. It does come with O-rings, and all the necessary fitting and acorn nuts, washers, all that good stuff. 219. I got the actual cylinders back at the beginning of the year, and these I got from Vito, $1,250. I ended up sending them off to Driveline. They did the porting, and obviously I asked him how much. He said $250. I boxed them up. I shipped them out. A few days later, I called. I said, "Did you get my cylinders?" He said, "Yes, we did." I told him, "I am going to pay you $400." He was like, "That's not necessary." I was like, "Well, I want you to spend some extra time on them." And so he did. And, I'm really happy with my porting and what he did with these. I told him what I was looking for is a really big, broad power band. That's what that engine gives me. That was my old 391. It was a fun bike to ride. Instant throttle response, big broad power band with the boost ports. It came on early, had a great mid, had a great top end, and it had really good over rev. That thing was a beast. And that's what I told him I want from these cylinders. So he's like, "Yeah, not a problem." So I was like, "Well, give me some round numbers. What kind of pipes do you like? What kind of carbs do you like?" He said they like to run the PWK 35s, 7 degrees of timing, and they for the most part they run shear pipes. And the reason they run the shear pipes is because they make a lot of mid and top end power. He's like, they don't really perform too good on the bottom end. And I said, "Yes, I'm aware of that. My buddy, he's got shear pipes, and they have a dead spot on the bottom, like a flat spot. They just don't perform very well." He's like, "Yeah, they you got to get them up in the RPMs before they actually take off." And so I was like, "Well, what other options do I have?" He's like, "Well, we actually." He's like, "What are you doing with the bike? Are you going to drag race it?" I was like, "No, it's a hardcore trail bike." He's like, "Well, we have SLP pipes, and that we've had, really good luck with. We've done a lot of dynoing, and they do perform well on the bottom. Not quite as good up top, like the shears, but they make all around good power." And I was like, "Well, I don't really like how the SLPs look." He's like, "Okay, what do you like?" I was like, "Well, how about the Paul Turner mid pipes?" He's like, "Well," he's like, "We tried last year. One of our customers, we did some dyno work for them, and he had a brand new set of Paul Turner mids, and everything we tried to do to get that bike to respond, it was down, and it was missing 10 to 12 horsepower compared to the shears or the SLPs." He's like, "We just couldn't get it to work." He's like, I would not recommend the Paul Turner mids." I said, "Okay." So I was like, "Well, the other pipe that I really like are CPIs. I'm sure I could find a used set of CPIs. What do you think about them?" He's like, "They're amazing." He's like, "They're really good." He's like, "In fact, Empire Racing just started this month. They're making them and they're selling them." So he's like, "Reach out to them and find out, when, if that's something you want to get, because you can get a brand new set." And I was like, "Cool." So I did. I reached out to Empire Racing and I bought a brand new set of CPIs. So anyway, I asked him, I was like, "So how do these CPIs compare against like the shears?" He's like, "Freaking awesome." He's like, "They stopped making these pipes 4 years ago, but we obviously we have CPI pipes, and we do a lot of dyno testing, and they come on hard. They're extremely responsive. They got a lot more bottom end power. They pull hard in the mid, and they got a lot of top end power too." He's like, they're ideally like the best pipe you can get." And he is like, yeah, we just don't have that. Obviously, we don't have a lot of customers that are running them right now because they stopped making them for the last 4 years. And I was like, yeah, I know, that's a shame. But anyway, yeah, they're making sure they're making CPI pipes again. I'm really happy. And I got mine, and they're like a work of art. The chrome is mint, and just absolutely beautiful pipe. So anyway, so I said, so what kind of numbers are you getting? He's like, well, the way they are out of the box, you don't have to port them, nothing. Just throw them on there. You're gonna get 86 horsepower, 86 horsepower on pump gas. I said, well, what if we port these? I can send them to you. We'll port them, open them up a little bit. What kind of numbers could I expect with the CPIs and the PWK 35s? He said, easy mid 90s, easy. So I said, basically what you're saying is it's a solid 90 horsepower bike. He's like, all day long. So let's get into the porting. I like what they did. They did not change the port, the port timing on the intake side or the exhaust side. They really didn't mess with it too much because it's already like perfect the way it is out of the box. So let's start with the exhaust side. It's a full drag, basically. If you look at the overall shape and dimensions of the exhaust port, they didn't really touch it. What they did is they opened up that triple port. Let me see if I can get some light on here. They opened up the triple port, smoothed it all out. They did actually polish the exhaust port, but you can see the triple ports, they really, really like opened them. Same thing with the intake side. They opened up the boost ports a lot. They're huge. You can see it right there, the size of that boost port. Same over here on that side. And then you can see the floor, they kind of massaged it a little bit, like right where it goes into the boost ports. But they didn't really change or alter the port timing. That little cross piece right there, they streamlined it a little bit. And that's it. They didn't really alter the actual shape or the port timing. Very, very little. But definitely those boost ports, it's going to allow a lot more air and fuel to get into the transfer port area. They spent most of their time on the transfer port. Let me roll this thing over. When I shipped them my cylinders, I sent them my old gaskets. These gaskets are pre-cut by Fast Racing, the guy that actually built this engine. He pre-cuts these gaskets, and these are basically exactly the same size as a Cub cylinder. Same exact size. My upper case has been ported to the max on the OEM cylinder. It's the same shape and size as a Cub. And now these Assassin 2s are the same size and shape as a Cub as well. They have been port matched to my gasket, and the gasket is cut to the size of my upper case. So it's a perfect match. So let me show you those boost ports. Where is it at? Right there. You see how the boost port, they really cleaned it up, opened it up, and it dumps right into, my camera's not really picking it up too good. Maybe if I bring it back a little bit. Those boost ports are huge. And then that little centerpiece right there, that little centerpiece, they angled it slightly and they lowered it. And that helps all that air and fuel coming in through that boost port get into this whole transfer port area. And that's where it's going to make a lot more bottom end power. And obviously mid, that whole power curve, it's going to be enhanced. Especially the bottom. This is going to be a fun motor. So anyway, when it comes to numbers, I could throw these numbers out there. Like, I didn't know. When Lan was telling me the numbers, I'm not going to hold them to it. Numbers don't really mean crap. What matters is, does the bike run good? Does the bike perform well? Are you happy with the bike? I've had a lot of brand new bikes back in the day, 252 stroke bikes, and some of them had really good bottom and mid, and some of them had no bottom, but they made good mid and top. And some bikes, they're hard to get on the pipe. Other bikes are really easy to get on the pipe. And it doesn't matter if, it was the 125s I used to ride, or the 250s, or the KX500s. The funnest bike that I ever had were the bikes that were easy to get on the pipe. And they had that big, broad power band. Good bottom, good mid, and decent top end. Those were the funnest bikes to ride. I can remember I had a 2000 KX252 stroke. That was just a really fun bike. I had a 2002 CR252 stroke. Brand new. That was a fun bike. I had a 2003 RM252 stroke. That was a brand new bike. That was a fun bike. I had a 2006 KX252 stroke. That bike was a gun and run. It was not easy to get on the pipe, but mid and top, it was a beast. But it was not a fun bike to ride. It didn't want to get on the pipe easy. And it had no bottom end. I've had a bunch of KX500s that I've been on in the past. I mean, those things are awesome. But so numbers don't mean crap, guys. You just got to be happy with what you got. And you got to remember too, dyno numbers don't mean crap, because you could take your bike to one dyno shop, and they can give you a graph and say, this is how much horsepower you're making. This is how much torque you're making. And then you can take your bike to the next town, a different dyno, and get completely different numbers. So dyno numbers don't mean crap either. The only thing that matters is, obviously, how you put your bike together, with all the components, and do all the components and jive. Do they all work together? You want your cylinders and your cases, to be port matched. And obviously the right carburation, the right timing, the right exhaust system, the right, obviously good air filters, timing, everything, compression. It's all got to work together. And when at the end of the day, whatever number you make, so be it. But, so the numbers I'm giving you, these are rough numbers. Like that engine right there, when Jeff built it, he was like, Jeff specializes in that engine. I'm talking Jeff at Fast Racing. That's what he actually built his name kind of like on building that engine. It's a 4 mil stock OEM cylinders. They're like heavily ported. He does, he ports the cases. He basically does everything. And he makes a lot of power. And everybody knows that he can make that engine work. And back in the day, sure enough, when he built that engine, it works. He spent a lot of time designing and the way he ports and all that crap. So, But anyway, yeah, these are, obviously the next generation with, bigger boost ports on the front, triple ports on the back. You got, just everything about these, bigger pistons. Everything about these is better. So these are going to make a little bit more horsepower, a little bit more torque, and all around, should be just a really nice engine, a fun engine. So we'll see you guys on the next video. Like and subscribe. Peace.